He is writing by candlelight. His hand is steady. His words are measured. But the paper in front of him carries a weight that few pieces of parchment have ever carried. Because Imam Hussain radiallahu anhu knows what is coming. He knows the army is marching toward him. He knows the numbers. He knows they want his head. He knows this letter might be the last thing he ever writes. And so he writes with the clarity of a man who has already accepted his fate, who has already said goodbye to this world, who is writing not for himself, but for those who will come after him. 1,400 years later, we still have that letter, and it changes everything. Assalamu alaikum, and welcome. Before we get to the letter, you need to understand what brought Imam Hussain to this moment. It is 680 CE.
This is the moment everything changes. Because Imam Hussein's refusal is not arrogance. It is not political ambition. It is something far deeper. It is principle. Imam Hussain understands that if he accepts this bay'ah, if he legitimizes Yazid's rule publicly, then he becomes complicit in what Yazid represents, in the corruption that Yazid brings, in the turning away from the teachings of the Prophet that Yazid embodies. And Imam Hussain cannot do that, even knowing what refusal will cost him. Yazid sends an order to the governor of Medina, bring me Imam Hussein's head, or bring me his pledge of loyalty. Imam Hussain knows he has no choice. He cannot stay in Medina. He cannot give the pledge. So he decides to leave. He is invited to Kufa, a city in Iraq where the people are asking for his leader.
It is the 9th of Muharram, the day before Ashura. The army of Yazid has encircled them. Thousands of soldiers, a force so overwhelming that any attempt at battle would be futile. Imam Hussain calls his family together, his children, his wives, his sisters, and he tells them the truth. Tomorrow, we will not see the sun set. He tells them they can try to escape. If any of them want to leave, he will not stop them. He will arrange safe passage if possible. Not one person leaves. His family chooses to stay with him, to face what is coming, because they understand, as he understands, that some things are more important than life itself. And that night, as the camp prepares for what is coming, Imam Hussain sits down to write. This is the letter. It is not long. It is not grandiose. It is written with the simplicity of a man who has nothing left to prove, who has moved beyond fear into a space of complete surrender to Allah's will. He writes to one of his most trusted companions, Abdullah ibn Abbas, an old man now, a scholar, a man who had seen the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam himself. And
The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam taught us that the best of struggles is a word of truth spoken before a tyrant. I could have chosen silence. I could have chosen safety. I could have given the pledge and lived out my days in comfort. But I would have been choosing dunya over deen, comfort over truth. And I cannot do that. Tomorrow, I may not be alive. My family may not be alive. But the message will live. That a Muslim can choose principle over comfort, can choose truth over safety, can choose Allah over everything else. This is what I want you to tell people. Not that Imam Hussain died, but that Imam Hussain chose something higher than death. That choice, that willingness to sacrifice everything for the deen, this is what the Ummah needs to remember. Now, stop here. Because I want you to feel what that letter actually is. This is not a man writing his will. This is not a man asking for revenge or asking for his death to be avenged. This is a man writing an instruction manual for how to live with integrity in a world that will pressure you to compromise that integrity. He is saying, if you understand nothing else about what is happening here, understand this. I chose principle, and I am at peace with that choice. That peace, that absolute peace in the face of death, that is what comes from knowing you have lived according to your conscience.
The letter continues, "I know that many people will blame me for what happens. They will say Imam Hussain brought this upon himself, that he should have given the pledge, that he should have accepted Yazid's rule. But understand, if the scholars of Deen remain silent when injustice spreads, then who will speak? If the family of the Prophet remains silent, then who will remind people of what the Prophet taught? Sometimes remaining silent is a choice to accept the injustice, and I cannot accept it. I know my death will cause pain. My family will suffer. People will grieve. But out of this suffering, out of this moment, a message will be sent across generations. That a Muslim's honor is worth more than his life. That Deen is worth more than comfort. That speaking truth matters, even if it costs everything." And then, at the end of the letter, he writes something that is so profound, so perfectly capturing what he understands in that moment, that it has been preserved word for word. "Do not mourn for me. Do not make my death an occasion for sorrow, but make it an occasion to remember what I stood for. Make it a reminder that Islam is not a religion of comfort and compromise. Islam is a deen that demands sacrifice, that demands integrity, that demands speaking truth even when the sword is raised against you. If my death brings people back to the deen, if my blood reminds people of what they have forgotten, then my death will not have been in vain. This is what I ask of you. Not revenge, not anger, but remembrance and commitment to never compromise on the deen the way Yazid wants us to compromise." The next morning came, the 10th of Muharram, Ashura. Imam Hussain and his companions stood to face an army they could not defeat. He fought. He resisted. He did not go passive into death. He fought with courage and with faith, knowing that the outcome was already written. And when it was over, Imam Hussain ibn Ali was gone. But the letter remained. Now, I want to ask you something. Why does Ashura matter? Why do Muslims still remember this day, more than 1,400 years later? Is it because Imam Hussain died? No. Thousands of people died in that era. Thousands of companions of the Prophet were killed. We don't remember all of them with the same intensity. We remember Imam Hussain because of what he stood for. Because he looked at a choice between comfort and principle. And he chose principle, knowing it would cost him everything. And here is what breaks my heart about our time. We live in a world where choosing principle is becoming rarer and rarer.
There is a narration that describes what happened to that letter. Abdullah ibn Abbas received it, and he wept. He wept because he understood that he was reading the farewell of a man who had already said goodbye to this world. He kept the letter. He shared it. He made sure it was preserved. Because he understood this was not just a personal letter. This was a message to all of us, to every Muslim who would come after. The letter of Imam Hussain is still being written. Every time a Muslim chooses principle over comfort, every time someone speaks truth, even when it costs them, every time a person refuses to compromise on their deen, even when the world pressures them to compromise, that is the continuation of Imam Hussein's letter. That is his legacy. I want to ask you, what would you write in your last letter? What would you want people to remember about you? What principles would you not compromise on, even if it cost you everything? Think about that, because Imam Hussain is asking us, through his letter, through his sacrifice, to think about that right now, before we are tested, before the pressure comes, before we have to choose. He is asking us to know right now what we stand for, so that when the moment comes, we will have the strength to stand for it.
The letter of Imam Hussain before Karbala is not just history. It is a mirror. And it is asking us, what do you see when you look into it? Jazakumullahu khair. Assalamu alaikum.